And I haven't figured out, if anybody knows, I haven't figured out how to have that little sign come up instead that you click instead of having that annoying voice come on. I was aware I wouldn't want to start that in the middle of a meditation. If I'd forgotten, I don't want to say, oh, whoops, and then hit it. And so here we are. Now we're recording. So tonight is kind of a, well, it's a new section, would be one way of putting it. We're beginning to look at, or we will be beginning to look at the fourth point of mind training. And I'll be using this book. If you have never seen this one or you don't have it, this is the, and it's in the stuff on the website. This is the writing that most of the commentaries are based on. It's Jamkin Kontrol's work. The fourth point of mind training is called the utilization of the practice in one's whole life. And of course, we've been utilizing the practice in our whole lives already. So I wonder why they said that. But the aspects they bring up in the only two slogans in this fourth section come at it from a different angle. Which we will not get into tonight, or if we do, just touch it. What I really want to do, as I perhaps do too often, but maybe not, is to once again look back and to review kind of where we are and how we got there, and to freshen up some of the practices and so on, to help us remember, in fact, perhaps the ones we've looked at and passed by and left, to have another thought, maybe that's worth looking at again. These first 3 points are really, and my mind is saying, well, the fourth point is too. But these first 3 points are really the chunky meat of the Lojong. If we just stopped right here and just practiced what we have done with these 3 points, 16 slogans altogether in that, somewhere in that range, we would be well served. And before we actually get into the first point, and I'm not going to go through it in any detail, my plan is to perhaps talk a bit, but mainly just to read through the translations of the slogans as given in this book and pause after each one to allow each of us to reflect on, do I even remember that? If I do remember it, am I using it? If I am using it, how am I using it? Just to take a little bit of time to think about how we're really utilizing the practice as we move through our day, as we move through our lives, as we move through our relationships and so on. So this is a preliminary chapter to this called The Need for Mind Training. And this is, well, I'll just read it. You can come to your own conclusions. Don't even consider, says Jamkin Kontrol, the ephemeral happiness that results from birth in the higher realms of gods and men. Although the enlightenment of Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas can be realized, it is not a final nirvana or a transcendence of misery. Consequently, we should strive only for the state of completely perfected Buddhahood. All right, that's quite. I actually say, okay, I'm not ready for that. Let me just close the book. my opinion, with all due respect to our teacher, Jamgon Khantrul, is that even if what we're striving for is to be a little more understanding, a little more compassionate, a little more patient, a little more generous, to increasingly begin to look outward at the needs of being of being a benefit in various ways in the world. This is still extremely powerfully useful, these mind trainings. Striving for the completely perfected Buddhahood. I mean, in some ways, I'm not sure I really even understand exactly what that means. I have an idea, I could probably talk about it, but, so if you find your aspiration isn't at that level, don't be distressed. So he continues. There are no methods to effect this attainment other than those which rely on two forms of meditation. Relative bodhicitta, which is training the mind in love and compassion, and ultimate bodhicitta, which is resting evenly in a non-discursive state, free from conceptual elaborations. Nagarjuna says, if the rest of humanity and I wish to attain insurpassable awakening, the basis for this is bodhicitta, as stable as the king of mountains, compassion, which touches everything, and pristine wisdom, which does not rely on duality. So he's anticipating that second point of the meditation that takes us out of discursive state, not out of thoughts arising. So important, it's different. The discursive state is when you begin to chew on it, rumble on it, get on the train of thought and so forth. Free from conceptual elaborations. We're not dramatizing, making stuff up, and so forth and so on. Compassion, which touches everything, and pristine wisdom, which does not rely on duality. Moreover, he continues, whatever accumulations of merit and wisdom we may have, the root of spiritual development in the Mahayana, the six perfections, patience, generosity, effort, concentration, so forth, non-abiding nirvana, and so on, is simply the arousal of bodhicitta. So all of these practices that we do, hindrances and factors of awakening, and all of the six paramitas are for the purpose of arousing this awakened heart-mind. That's why we do it. It arises on the basis of love and compassion. Even when full Buddhahood is attained, there is nothing to do except to work for the welfare of others with non-referential compassion. True ultimate bodhicitta will not arise in the course of experience of beginners. But relative bodhicitta will definitely arise if they train in it. With the development of relative bodhicitta, ultimate bodhicitta will be realized naturally. And I know that there have been a lot of people over the years that I've been working with this teaching become a bit frustrated, occasionally distressed. They don't really feel they're really touching the open spaciousness, for lack of a better word, because those words automatically immediately start getting in the way of that clear light mind. And here he is saying, relax. As we begin this process, and in this process, I'm very much still a beginner. I mean, this is a lifetime practice. As we begin this practice, you just touch what you can. You do the meditation instructions. you develop your relative bodhicitta, you develop your compassionate heart, and the ultimate will follow. Interestingly, touching that ultimate, initially Pema Chodron talks about it a fair amount, and as they all do, that flash, if you want, that larger than what you think of as yourself, is important to do as a part of moving into that relative bodhicitta. So they rely on each other very much. But there's no need to be impatient or frustrated with, I'm not getting where I need to get. So he's saying, it's okay, relax here. So, for these and many similar reasons, we must meditate energetically on relative bodhicitta at the beginning if we are to achieve any meaningful results with respect to bodhicitta. For someone who wishes instruction on this subject, that would be us, the basic method for training is, as Shantideva says, he who desires shelter quickly for himself and for all others should use this sacred mystery, the exchanging of oneself for others. Consequently, only the method of meditation of exchanging oneself for others is explained in what follows. All other methods of mind training are simply elaborations of this theme. So he's speaking to the fact that there are all kinds of, there's lots of different ways of looking at practice. And he's saying, you know, when it gets down to brass tacks here, this is the one. That gives the shelter. And he's not going to talk about all the others. He's just going right there. That's the nature of the Lojong instructions. Is this, the word pith comes to mind. It is pithy. It is right there at the kernel of it all. So that's his 2-page on need for mind training. If you haven't read that or haven't read it recently, of course I just read it to you, but still worth going back and having a look again. Funny, for me, when I hear someone reading it and I hear they're thinking about it and so forth, it's different than when I'm reading it using my eyes to see the words. And sometimes different insights and understandings come to me in those two different modes. So it's always, it can be useful sometimes to go back and do it again that way. So then we move into the actual instructions. And again, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but I do want to touch them in a way that brings it back and makes a little bit of sense. So the first point of mind training is first do the groundwork. And he divides that into 2 sections. One is the groundwork for a period of meditation. And his instruction on that is to begin each practice period bringing up the embodiment for you of wisdom and compassion, and bring that into your heart. He gives instruction in the traditional Guru Yoga, but in essence, that's what we're talking about. The embodiment of compassion, the embodiments of deep understanding, the embodiment of clear light mind, however you may experience that in a teacher, living, dead, historic, even the Buddha. Take a moment. Allow that to be present in your heart. And then he talks about the groundwork instructions that we usually focus on, which is the preciousness of human existence, this rare and precious life of leisure and opportunity that we have, impermanence of that life and of all things. In fact, to begin to look at impermanence not as a thing, but rather just recognizing that everything that looks like a thing is actually a process. It's actually a process of various things coming together, various processes coming together, each affecting the other, beginning to soften the idea of that solidity. Cause and effect, that all we see is manifestation of its causes and conditions, including us. And lastly, that this unsatisfactory nature, dissatisfactory nature of the world of duality, of samsara, of the suffering that is there in its various forms. So that's the first point. And then moving into the second point, which is entitled The Actual Practice. Training in Bodhicitta, that's the title. And that's divided into two sections, ultimate and relative, you may recall. And he further divides, in his way of thinking about it, the ultimate bodhicitta is in instructions for meditation and instructions for after meditation. And that actually recurs throughout the book in certain ways. So the first slogan there is, look at all experience as a dream. And my mind is saying, wow, there's so much there. Down, Ken, down, because I feel myself getting ready to say too much. But look at all experience as a dream. In a dream, we recognize that our experience is constructed. In waking life, we don't see that. We think there's actually something out there that is a particular way, and there's us that is separate from it, and there is a subject and an object. In a dream, a night dream, we look at it, we say, well, everything in there, of course, is coming from my mind. Every character in the dream, every circumstance in the dream, everything that happens in the dream is all constructed. And what they're saying is the same is true when we are in waking life. Our experience is constructed. Is there a world out there? Yes. But take our visual experience, for example. We think this is how it is. But if a fly or a bird or a blue whale was to be in contact with these same things, their experience would not be at all like ours. So then the question comes up, well, which one is real? Which is ultimately an absolutely ridiculous question. The experience is the process of these things. So we want to begin to increasingly recognize that what we're seeing out here is a construction, that it is impermanent, that as soon as it happens, all that is left is a memory, which is a construction, and not a very stable one at that. So that's one of many ways of thinking about see-off phenomena as dreams. There are a lot of other ones. That's what comes to my mind at the moment. And then he continues along, as you know. So we're looking at all, this is a meditation instruction, by the way. So we're in meditation. We're seeing all this stuff come up that seems, again, real separate. This is me. That's the experience. I'm seeing it arise in my mind, which I own, which is separate from that. All of those kinds of things. So we're looking at that and we start to say, okay, this is true. These appearances are our mind's manifestations, a form of confusion, if you will. In the end, they're not actually existent in any way that we can grasp them, any way that they will remain, any way that really makes them, quote, real. And then he says, so if you wonder if the mind that is wondering about this is real, then the second part of this meditation instruction, examine the nature of this unborn awareness. So he invites us to look directly at the presence of mind. What do you find? And he's saying, well, no color, no shape, no form, no nothing. You can't put anything, you can't grab it. There's nothing to hold on to. You look into your mind, thoughts are there, feelings arise, they all pass away. What is the actual nature of the awareness? And thoughts may occur. He says, thoughts about this remedy for the tendency to cling. Tendency to cling is there. The remedy is looking at this nature and saying, oh, why, my goodness, there's nothing really to grab onto there. And thoughts about this remedy for this tendency may arise. For example, you may think mind and body are all empty. If this happens, then let even this remedy release naturally. Even there, you see, oh, that's another concept. Once again, there's a construction. One more time, the mind is having to come to a conclusion, make something real. Let it go. Let it go. And then the essence of the path rests in the basis of all experience. This instruction presents the actual method of placing the mind. When there's no involvement with the activity of the 7 groups of consciousness, being the 5 senses, the mind with its thoughts, and that which says, I am me, there is still the nature of all phenomena, the natural state, noble Buddha nature, clear light mind. Let go and rest into whatever your experience of that may be, without worrying about whether your experience of it is good enough, which is where get tangled. So just let it all go. What is here now if there is no problem to solve, nothing to think about? So those are the meditation instructions. Look at all experience as a dream, examine the nature of unborn awareness, let even the remedy release itself, and the essence of the path rest in the basis of all experience. And then the last instruction in this first part of the second point is, in daily life, be a child of illusion. After meditation, do not allow the experience of resting evenly to dissipate, no matter what form of activity you engage in. Continually foster the feeling of knowing that all appearances, yourself, others, animate or inanimate, appear, though they seem to be nothing. Be like a child of illusion. You see everything the same way we know a rainbow is. There it is. We can see it so clearly. Can we get it? Can we hold it? Can we find where it is? Can we find the pot of gold at the end of it? No, because it's not really there. In the mirage of the water on a hot road, there's this mirage. Is the mirage there? Yes, the mirage is there. Is it real? No, it's not. And to try to spend your time figuring out how deep the water is in the mirage is wasting your time. We just want to recognize that it is a mirage. So then he changes to the relative bodhicitta. And he has a preparation section in this. The first actual slogan here is train in taking and sending alternately, put them on the breath. And what he talks about, and he uses the typical traditional mother images, both of your own mother and that all beings have been your mother and that you have been the mother of all beings and so forth in the Buddhist thought. But there are other ways of going about that. Preparation, then you should meditate on love and compassion. They form the basis for taking and sending. And you begin to think of people that you love, benefactors, others, and begin to develop thoughts of desiring them to be happy and not to suffer. This is not riding the breath at this point. I think it's also too useful, let us say you've been moved in the news by a group of people that are suffering in some particular way. To simply start breathing in and out and riding might be better served by first really spending some time contemplating and reflecting on what that suffering is and how your own suffering is not so different, even though it may be half a world away, even though it may be something that you didn't experience directly in that way, but nonetheless, these basic things of suffering, of pain, of fear, of anxiety, of anger and rage, all these things, we all know them. We all know them. So to really reflect on these. So he does that sort of preliminary thing, and then train and taking and sending alternately puts them on the breath. And I won't go into those, into that further. I mean, we've done a fair amount with that. Maybe we'll practice a little bit with that tonight if I get through this in time. And of course, there's a lot in literature. Pema Chodron does some great, as do others, audios and visuals and